Well, hey everybody, it's Wes. Nate and I have been cooking up some fun stuff in way of just teaching things that we've all kind of been learning for some time, but really trying to bring a more hands-on approach to it. And one of the ways that we want to do that is through video teaching. We've got some cool resources and time this summer to do that. And so one of these first ones that I want to bring to you is an in-ear monitor mixing kind of training session. So that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be going through a set that we recorded a couple weeks ago, and we're going to be going through, and I'm going to be basically giving some just good principles to in-ear monitor mixing, how I approach it. And the importance of this really is to educate and basically give you guys something to really work on, because in-ear monitor mixes are really, really huge. I've found as a musician, as a worship leader, and even as a vocalist, and a lot of us, come into a worship setting and we don't necessarily have, a lot of experience with in-ear monitors, or maybe none at all. And I know we tend to, when you come into audition, you experience it a little bit for the first time, and maybe when you jam with us, you experience it for the first time. But there's plenty of us that have been on the teams for years where we just kind of know what we know, and we mix from there. And so I hope that this video is really applicable to everyone, whether you've been on the team for 6 years or you've been on the team for 6 months. Really want to kind of give some just good criteria and some good thoughts for you to really chew on for the next time you're on. Do want to say, don't feel like you have to try to implement all of these, especially the next time you're on. We don't want to spend an hour on mixing in-ears, but this is just something to be mindful of the next time that you are on, and how you approach your mix. I also want to encourage that the stuff we'll be going over today on the iPad, most of you know already, but want to encourage you, if you do want to try any of this stuff, you can come early to a rehearsal. You can talk to me about potentially getting your iPhone set as an in-ear monitor mixing tool, or also even pre-mixing your ears, which is something that I usually do from the soundboard for the worship team. So yeah, anyways, we're going to jump in together on mixing today, and what I'm going to do is you're going to hear my in-ear monitor mix from Awaken rehearsal, which was a couple weeks ago. I was playing drums, and so you're going to hear this mix. This was pretty much a finished mix from where I was at the end of the night, and so we'll walk through each of the channels, and we'll get a glimpse on what's going on, and I'll kind of show you how I built the mix from the ground up, and some of the things that you can do and how you can approach it from a different mindset depending on which instrument or whether you're singing or not. So let's jump in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a listen through to my monitor mix and start to explain what's going on here. So you'll notice, first off, I'm playing drums, so you're going to hear a considerable amount of drums. I want you to pay attention to just the overall balance of the mix. What we're listening to right now is what all is being heard, what is not being heard. I'm going to go ahead and start scrolling through the different pages of the iPad so you can kind of see what's going on.
Shout your praise, our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord, and all the earth will shout your praise, our hearts will
So that was a general idea of what's going on in my ears, and I'm sure one of the first things you're going to notice is, wow, that's a lot. And so what I'm going to do is kind of walk through step by step how I got to that point in my mix, and kind of give you my train of thought as to what's going on, why I haven't mixed the way that I do. And because obviously a super full mix is not going to be for everyone. So I want us to always keep that in mind. But I do want to point out ways to get to a fuller mix and still being smart about it. So let's go back and we're just going to kind of build this mix from the ground up, if that makes sense. Now, I know when you guys show up here on Thursday, your faders are not going to be zeroed out like this. That would be a waste of time. That would make us spend a lot of time on the iPad that we don't need to. And so that's why I premix yours for everyone. But for the sake of just starting from the ground up, we're going to go ahead and we're going to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in my instrument first. Now, one of the things, being a rhythmic instrument, the drums, I'm going to want to make sure that I also start with click track. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to add that in as well. So a lot of times what I'll do is I will actually start my mix with click track kind of being the loudest thing in my ear. Generally for me, that's around this like -5 area, but I know all of our ears differ. So I'm going to fire this back up. So we've got a good volume on click. That feels pretty nice. And so what I'm going to start doing is, obviously, if I were playing right now and mixing my ears, I couldn't just start from 0. So just keep bearing that in mind. So obviously, I'm not hitting every single drum at this minute, so I can't get a perfect mix on my toms, but typically, you can set a lot of your drum volumes about the same across the board. With the snare drum, we've got those 2 microphones. You can get a really round sound out of this top microphone, and you can get a really snappy sound out of this bottom microphone. And then with the 2 cymbal mics, you can kind of blend those together. I usually keep those the same. So now I've got a pretty good starting spot for drums. This is my instrument. This is what I want to build everything around. So my goal is going to be, I don't want anything that I'm going to mix in to overshadow what I'm playing. I also don't want it to overmix. I don't want to overmix the click track behind it as well. So that's why I start with those first. So we're going to jump on over here to bass guitar. And I tend to favor quite a bit of bass in my mix, especially as a drummer. And because of that, I want to be able to hear what the bass player is playing. I want to be able to tailor my playing around that. And bass frequencies, the way that we have them EQ'd in our ears, it's not going to clash with a lot of the other instruments very much. It kind of owns its own pocket. Now we'll continue. I'm going to add some guitars. Now you'll notice if you're listening to this video with headphones, you're going to hear that guitar is only in my left ear. Now, as some of you have probably noticed when you've been on, back row musicians have stereo in-ear mixes. What that means is you can separate left and right, meaning you can pan individuals to different sides. Now, I know that's a really new concept for a lot of us, and we're not going to dive into the real details of it today, but what we are going to do is I want you to notice how, with those guitars in my ears the way that they are, I'm able to mix them both in, and you can hear some difference. So try now even taking your left or your right ear out and notice the difference you hear with the guitars. You're going to hear one and not the other, and then vice versa when you switch ears. What that does is that creates separation in our in-ear mix. It means that I can mix pretty much as much guitar as I want, and they're not stepping on each other. Our ears, we were given 2 of them, left and right, so that we could, separate these 2 things, and stereo helps us do just that. One thing to really practice when you're mixing your ears, as you bring these things up, one of the things I'll do, so if you were to start with this mix that we have right now, if this was what you put in right away, and this is a pretty decent mix already, if this is what you put in Thursday night right away when you start, you're not going to be able to know what Nate's guitar sounds like, this guitar 3 and E. You're not going to hear what this guitar 2 JSL sounds like, because it's your first time hearing this mix. And so a lot of times what I'll do, because if you keep your volume, at a medium rate, you're going to be able to take the fader and you're going to be able to push it up without hurting yourself. You're going to hear, oh, okay, that's the sound that channel's making. And then you can pull it back down to where it's comfortable. Do the same with the other guitar. What's happening here? Okay, so more of a rhythmic. Keys, let's pull those up. So what's that sound like if it's really loud? Well, it's really full. It starts to overshadow the bass a little bit. So we pull those back down. So it gives me those real low mid frequencies. I can still hear everything that's going on. We've got aux keys. Really shimmery piano, some pad going on. So see, notice how I'm just starting to figure out what's making what sound, and then I'm pulling it back to where I can still hear it. It's comfortable, but it's not overpowering anything. I've never lost the click track. I've never lost the drums, which is my instrument. We're gonna fade these two channels up just because I know that they'll be useful later. Now, when we get to vocals, you're all used to the sound person, the broadcast sound engineer, walking through the vocal process with you, but usually you should have a decent amount of vocals in your ears already. Now typically as a musician, I want to note here that we don't put background vocalists in our ears unless they happen to lead a part of the set, and that's just for simplicity. So we're going to start with Leah's voice. Leah was the worship leader. Got her mixed up pretty good. Probably pull her back just a little bit. I'm starting to lose the click just a little. Bring up another vocalist. Kim was our song leader, so I'm going to want her in my ears. So take a minute, notice what you're hearing. This music's going to come down to a lower part, and for me personally, what I'm hearing right now is a pretty just full, solid mix. I do think that my bass guitar was maybe just a little too hot. It was starting to overpower the drums a little bit. I was having to push the vocals higher than I wanted to get on top of the bass guitar, and so I wanted to bring that bass down just a little bit. And the next thing I want to talk about is this page right here, this aux page. Most of you are aware by now that we've made some changes to the talkback section of our in-ear monitoring, and the talkback microphone is what I'm talking into right now. It's this microphone that's at the broadcast in-ear monitor soundboard, and the broadcast tech will use that to talk to us during rehearsal. Now, it's super important that that person checks this microphone and gives musicians and worship team members a chance to change the level of that microphone. But I don't know if all of you are aware, this is actually the fader, which how you do that. This talkback microphone with a nice, cute little smiley face. So if you're having a hard time hearing the broadcast engineer trying to get your attention, then that should be a red flag for you. If you're in the middle of rehearsal and you know that you're being talked to and the worship leader has to turn around and look at you, that's a red flag that you probably didn't have this set quite loud enough in your ears, and there is a way to change it. This is the way to change it. You would go to this fader and you would move it up and down accordingly. +5, that is a lot. I'm only using it that loud for the recording purposes. Typically, you're going to see that fader somewhere down in this zone. -10, -5 is a good place to start. And so just always be mindful of that. If you know in the past you've had a hard time hearing the talkback mic from the broadcast tech, grab the iPad before we start jamming and turn it up. Make sure you get that loud. Make sure you're paying attention when the tech tests their microphone. I always tell you guys that you want to make sure that that's like not blaring in your ears, but it should be pretty loud, because once you start mixing, as we've heard, you'll start to lose that a little bit. All right, so just a couple more things to add as we continue to fine-tune this mix, as you've noticed, of Great Are You, Lord, from our Awaken rehearsal a couple weeks ago. So we've got a really great bass line mix going on here. There's a couple of things that we'll want to add, and that being the loop, as well as our room mics, some lavalier mics, if we're going to need those for that event, as well as effects. I want to let you guys listen to what those sound like as well. So we're going to go ahead, and I'm going to click play, and we're just going to keep going. Now again, if we keep the principle of turning something up until we hear what it's doing, we'll use it on the loop track here. There's nothing there. So this set, we were fortunate enough to have a full band, and we didn't need loop tracks, which was pretty awesome. So I'm gonna take that guy and turn it down, because I don't need it, right? What I want to add now is some room mic. That is very extreme room mic. You kind of notice it sounds like you're in a big arena now. One thing to note when you are mixing the room mic is that when you mix it during rehearsal, it's going to be pretty hard to hear what the room is actually going to sound like because it's empty, right? This is one channel that I would really encourage you guys to really experiment with. Experiment with the different levels you run. If you really want to feel like you're a part of the room, you can really turn this up. And you notice it doesn't do a ton to the mix itself, except it opens it up a little bit. When I really crank that up, I feel like I'm there in the room, and it's great. Now, we're going to flip over to this effects page, and I want you to hear what we've got going on in way of effects. So, if you look here on 3L, 3R, 4L, and 4R, the ones that are actually named box reverb and drum reverb, those are the only effects that we're using. They're pretty self-explanatory. We've got some drum reverb. We've got some vocal reverb. Now you'll notice that sounds pretty similar to the room mic. It gives that real tunnel effect to just the vocals. Only the vocals are going to be in there. And what I want to point out there, as our tracker starts here, what I want to point out there is that vocal reverb and room mic really tend to clash. So for those of you who will mix a little effects in your ears and kind of leave them, I would be really intentional about, hey, if you're saying I'm going to push the room mic on this and hear what it sounds like, take the vocal reverb out of your ears. You're not going to need it. Because typically the vocals are going to be the loudest thing in the house anyway, and you're going to get that really wet kind of feeling from them. So if you're running both vocal reverb and room mic in your ears, you're probably going to start to oversaturate yourself. It'll cloud up your mix a lot.
Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord.
So I took the vocal reverb down, and now I'm going to go ahead and head back.
And all the earth will shout your praise.
So you notice I start to get that kind of lively, not echoey, but kind of wet effect. That's what reverb does. Now you're getting the reverb from the room here, though, the room mic. That's what we just turned up.
And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you,
So that's going to be it for this tutorial. I really want to encourage you guys, to really press into kind of challenging the status quo a little bit. I want you to feel confident in your technical abilities to go and really mix your ears. Again, this isn't something that we want to spend a ton of time on during rehearsal, so we want to try to continue to be good stewards. All right, so coming out of the music portion of the mix, I do want to hit one last thing with you guys, and that is on this page. You'll notice we have the announcement mic and the 2 lav mics, which are actually named Matt and Mark right now. Those are a good thing to have in your ears, especially at any sort of special event, Awaken, Ignite, Breathe, where there might be a pastor's involvement, specifically in the worship set. That's a great thing to have in your ears, and typically I will start each of those between -5 and -10. You'll notice where I have my vocals, -5, -10. It's about the same. Spoken word, they're not going to be quite as loud as vocals. When you sing, you're quite a bit louder, so you can kind of be in this safe zone there between -5 and -10. And what's nice about these microphones is they are set a certain way on the broadcast soundboard that they will not be in your ears unless the broadcast person has put them up in the broadcast mix. So many of you might not have known that. You're thinking, oh, I don't want to hear Mark singing. I don't want to hear Matt singing. That's not going to happen. You'll only hear that when the sound person back here turns that up into the mix, and that's usually when you want to hear them because they probably have something important to say, whether it be like the welcome, scripture reader, or an interruption from one of the pastors. So just be mindful of that too. That is what those faders do. And so yeah, it's pretty helpful to have in your mix. So anyways, as far as this mix goes, that's a pretty comprehensive view on how I would take an in-ear monitor mix and mix it. I hope this was helpful. I do want to just leave you with some encouragement. We show you this because we want you guys to feel like you have the tools to succeed, the tools to get better. And one of the most important parts of being a confident musician is being confident in what you're hearing yourself, hearing the other band members, and in-ear monitoring is so important to get right, because when you put monitors in your ears, you really just close yourself off to everything going around. And so that's why we want to provide you guys with these tools. That's why we've invested so much as a church and as a tech ministry and worship ministry in just good equipment. And so now we just want to provide you guys with the education to really take it one step further, to really start to explore more and kind of push the boundaries. I do just want to hit again that in pushing those boundaries, we don't want to prioritize doing that during rehearsal as much, as far as we just want to be good stewards of each other's time. So please don't think this is an excuse to use the iPad for 10 minutes yourself. But if you want to come in early and pre-mix your ears, if you want to come in and experiment and say, hey, Wes, can you throw on a virtual sound check? And I want to listen to some things. Absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. And as I mentioned before, there is an iOS app available for mixing your ears. Come talk to me before you get involved with that, because there will be a little more training involved in how to do that. So I'll just leave you with that there are ways to think outside of the box with how you're mixing your ears. There are going to be more videos to come. You may have already watched them. An intro video about the basics of the iPad and setting up a mix, what each channel does, as well as a baseline mix for each position on the worship team. So be sure to listen for that as well. Thanks, everybody.